wash your hands. After you've washed your hands, make sure you dry them completely. The next thing you're going to do is get out all of your equipment. Some equipment that we'll be needing is a can opener,
a large spoon,
assorted knives for each ingredient, a cutting board, measuring cups and spoons,
and a bowl.
The ingredients you'll be needing would be tomatoes, onions,
2 cans of black beans,
1 can of corn,
salt,
balsamic vinegar,
garlic,
and cilantro.
Okay.
You'll then have to put away all the equipment you won't be needing now. For now, we won't be needing measuring cups, spoons, knives, cutting board, or spoon. All we'll be needing right now is a can opener.
Okay, so the second step that you will be doing is you will open up the 2 cans of black beans. We use Bush's black beans because we thought that they were the best kind to use.
You will then drain the black beans so there's not excess water in it to make the salsa all like watery and soggy. You'll do this twice. You use the can opener by opening it, going on the side, and twisting, like Julie just did.
Okay, then you will, after you've drained the beans, you will pour them into the bowl and make sure that they all get out.
If they don't all come out on your first try using a knife to scrape the rest of the beans into the bowl.
And then you will open your second can of beans and do the same with draining them.
You want to dispose of your can properly because if you leave the sharp edges up, it will probably cut your garbage bag and then garbage will get everywhere. You want to put the top of the thing in the can and then crush the can so it won't come out. Then you can throw it away. Well, recycle it, because save the world, right?
After you've done the same drainage thing with the second can,
You'll scoop out all the extra beans. We'll then take the same safety precautions with the second can. Remember, reduce, reuse, recycle. The next step will be opening the corn. You open the corn the same way with the can opener. Twist hard to make sure you get all the way around so the lid will come off. You then must also drain the excess water that's in the corn.
you want to make sure that you get all of the water out of the corn so the water doesn't overpower all of the ingredients. Then, once you're done with that, you will open them and dump them into the bowl.
You most likely will have less trouble getting the corn out because it's not as sticky as the beans. So then you'll just pour it right in. There's no need to use the knife for that.
And again, you will reduce, reuse, and recycle.
The next step, you're going to be needing a cutting board and a paring knife. You'll be using this to cut up the tomatoes. You'll need about 2 cups of tomatoes for your salsa. Each tomato is going to be about half of the cup, so you're going to want about 4 tomatoes. We've already cut up 3 of them, but we'll show you now how to cut up 1. First, you're going to cut it into halves, and then you'll cut the tomato into fourths. You'll then take one of the fourths and scoop out the insides of it. This will make sure that your salsa is less gooey and more fresh and crisp. And then you'll take the tomato and cut it into strips like this. Make sure that your strips aren't too thick, because if they are too thick, then it'll make your salsa really chunky. Unless, of course, you want it chunky, then you can make it as thick as you want. You'll then turn it sideways and start cutting it the same exact way, making it into little squares or dicing it. You'll then throw the tomatoes into the bowl with the beans and the corn.
Make sure that you throw the tomatoes into the bowl and not into the trash can,
as we have done before. You will then do it again to another tomato. Make sure when you're doing this to be completely safe and not cut towards your hand. You will, of course, have to cut towards yourself with a paring knife, but make sure that you're really careful. When using these knives, you may want some adult supervision, which we have.
Yes. We have that. While you are cutting the tomato, you do not want to cut so hard, because if you do, you might accidentally cut your fingers, and you want fingers to eat the salsa. While also cutting the tomatoes, you do not want to, you want to stay clear with your fingers of all of the cutting.
If you're inexperienced with this, you may want to have an adult do all the cutting, and then you can open the cans.
Okay, for the next step, we will need a cutting board, a French chef knife, and a chopper if you have one. We will be cutting up onions. Okay.
You want to cut off the ends of the onions so you don't get the gross brown part of the onion in your salsa. It doesn't taste good, plus it's just like crunchy and it's not oniony.
After you do that, you will cut the tomato, you will put it on the flat side, and you will cut it in half. Then you will split that, and you will cut it in half again. While you are doing this, make sure that you do not cut your fingers, because that will not be very good.
Yet again, you may want adult supervision for this, because it's quite a large knife.
Yes. Okay. So after you cut the halves, you would want to cut the halves in halves again. And then you just chop them up into small pieces, because you do not want them to be big. Okay, so after you do that, you do that with the other
Half, half, half.
yes.
This is also known as dicing a tomato.
Onion.
Onion.
Okay, I'm not redoing that one. If you do not get all of the big pieces in small pieces, then you will want to go over them one more time. Another way, and a safer option, to cut up an onion is to use the chopper. You will just put the onion underneath the chopper and hit the top. And then you will throw it around so you get more of the onion that you might not have gotten. And then you put that to the side, and you would do the other half. You will need to go over all of the onions again, so it is an even amount. For a big pile, you want to make sure that they're all in a small pile so they will all fit underneath the chopper. Okay.
You'll need approximately 1 cup of onions, which is about 2 small onions or a half of a big one. We've already cut up one, so we just showed you that one. And then you put it in the bowl. step, we will also be needing a French chef knife and a cutting board. For this step, we will be cutting up cilantro. For the cilantro, you're going to pour it on to the cutting board and take off some of the bigger stems so it will make it easier to cut. Just rip them off. You can either use a knife or you can just use your hands because it's not all that hard to do. And then throw them into the trash. You don't want to do too much because otherwise you're going to end up not having much cilantro. You'll just throw them away. There's a lot in this package.
Yes, there is.
Think we're good. Having a few left over is fine. Place it all into a neat pile in the middle of the cutting board. You'll then take the knife and in one hand you will hold the handle and the other hand you will place it on top of the knife and hold it onto the cutting board. You will then lift up the hand that's holding the handle and chop it like Julie's doing over the cilantro. You may have to readjust the cilantro into a neat pile every once in a while, like that. It will take a while to get it nice and chopped down, but it's actually really fun to do.
Yes.
Just also be careful that you keep your one hand underneath instead of on top instead of underneath of the knife, otherwise that could be very dangerous. You'll keep doing this until you get tiny little flakes of cilantro that ends up being a small pile in the middle of the cutting board. You want to make sure that every leaf is cut up evenly.
If it is not cut up evenly, you might end up with just leaves instead of little bits of cilantro.
And the leaves tend.
I am almost done cutting up all of the cilantro.
When you are done, you will place it in the bowl. Of course. Make sure you scrape off all the cilantro so you get all of the flavor.
You want to make sure that you get off all of the cilantro even if it touched the table, because the table should be clean. Like repeated, and to make sure that all of the salsa is mixed in.
Whenever you're done mixing up your salsa, you'll want to make sure that you can see all the colors to know that it's really mixed up well. For the next step, you will be needing the measuring spoons. You will take 1 teaspoon of minced garlic, 1 teaspoon, and place it into the bowl.
Make sure that you don't have any excess water in it. Next, you want to take a capful of balsamic vinegar.
2 capfuls actually. Be careful not to overflow. The last step in ingredients is to add a dash of salt to your salsa. You will then mix up your salsa with a spoon to make sure that all the flavors combine. Make sure to be very careful that the salsa doesn't go over the edge. When you're done mixing the salsa, you can serve with tortilla chips. It'll make a delicious snack and a healthy one too.